A new listener sent me a story about a week ago. This is a crazy one. This guy's wife, now ex-wife, went on a girls' night out and had a threesome. This is just nonsense. I met my wife at a house party and we hit it off right away. But something stood out that I didn't pay attention to in the beginning. She had 2 kids from a previous relationship and the kids didn't live with her. I found out the reason why later anyway. My wife was a party girl. She was really into partying, drinking and going out with her girlfriends a lot. She didn't display this type of behavior in the beginning. But it started to show as we continue to date. But I let it pass. Fast forward 2 years and our relationship is going well and we ended up getting married in January of 2008. My wife at the time worked for Sears and I was an electrician. I worked for a company as well, but I also had my own small business on the side. We bought a house and lived in it for 10 years before we sold it. By this time we had been married for 10 years. Right around this time, I noticed my wife was going out with her coworkers a lot. Back then for them, girls' night consisted of them drinking a lot at someone's house, getting drunk and passing out at one of their coworkers' houses. I really didn't care because I knew where she was, but that changed. They started meeting at clubs and on other occasions at bars, and I voiced my concerns right away and she would come back with the line, "We were just drinking, dancing, talking and people watching." One night, she went out with her coworkers again but didn't come home until the next day. I was livid when she came home. I was waiting for her and asked her where the hell was she. I told her, "Don't lie to me, the bars and clubs close at 2 a.m. but it was already after 8 a.m. and she had to work the next day." She tells me they went to an after-party at someone's house. I asked, "Why didn't you call me and tell me, or better yet come home?" She didn't say anything and I went to work without saying anything to her. I was pissed. I considered that to be blatantly disrespectful and I let her know that. Fast forward a couple of days and she is being nice and apologetic, cooking and staying home for a few days without going out. This went on for about 2 weeks before she had the urge to go out drinking and partying with her girlfriend's coworkers again. So our relationship started to take a hit. We started arguing more and having sex less often, which led me to believe that she just didn't care. Anyway, about a week later, I get a call from my best friend. He was the one that introduced me to my wife. We chatted for a bit. Then he asked me how my wife and I are doing. And I told him not good. I tell him that she is going out all the time, drinking, staying out all night. He says, "Well, you knew she was a party girl." I tell him it's gotten worse though, and I confronted her about it. After the conversation with my best friend, I started to think, was my wife cheating on me? At that point, my mind was just running at full speed. And later that night, I decided to flat out ask her if she was cheating on me. Of course, she said no. She said she loved me and would never want to hurt me like that. But even after she said that, it didn't seem like her words matched how she was treating me. So as time goes on, her attitude toward me hasn't really changed while at work. One day I get a call out of the blue from one of my wife's longtime girlfriends. She says that she has something to tell me, but it was not going to be easy. I'm thinking, no, here it goes. My heart started to race and I just wanted her to get on with it already. She tells me that my wife was having an affair with one of her coworkers and 2 other men. I said what she said. Remember, she didn't come home until the next morning. She indicated that night my wife went with 2 other women and 2 men from the club. The men were here on business and they all went to a hotel that was near the club. She said, my wife bragged about having a threesome with these strange men. I asked her why she didn't go with him. And she simply said, "I love my husband." Then she says that was the last time she hung out with my wife. She told me my wife has been cheating on me for at least 8 months or so. I couldn't believe it. I felt like my world had just come crashing down around me. I felt so betrayed and angry at that moment. All of the clues started to make sense. Why she was going out all the time. Why we were not having sex anymore. Everything just made sense. Now, I thanked her for telling me everything. I literally had tears in my eyes after talking to her, but that wasn't the only crazy phone call I got. My best friend called me again and had a confession to make. He didn't sleep with my wife and he wasn't honest about my wife's character. See, he knew my wife a bit before he introduced us. He told me that she had 2 kids from a previous marriage. She lost custody of her kids because she was using drugs and she cheated on her previous husband. I asked him why in the hell did he not tell me this sooner? He tells me that she was trying to find a good man and he assumed that she was trying to turn her life around, but he was wrong. I go home after receiving all of this horrible information and just crumble. But I had to keep my composure. I didn't want my wife to know what I found out today. She comes home from work and says she is going to one of her girlfriend's house. She wants her to take some pictures and tells me she will be back soon. All I said was okay. That night I made a few phone calls. I called my parents and asked could I stay with them until I got back on my feet? I told my parents why I needed to stay with him. They were devastated and my mom actually started crying. I made a few trips to get all the things I needed. And the next morning I was going to talk to a few lawyers to get the divorce process started. I get up the next morning to go to work and nothing from my wife, no calls, texts or anything. I figured she would call to find out where I was, but nothing. When I talked to the lawyer, he said Idaho offers both a fault-based divorce and a no-fault-based divorce. So I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I didn't give a damn about material things. I just wanted out. The lawyer filed for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. And now what's left is just waiting on the court date. Fast forward a month. My lawyer calls me and tells me that my wife has been served with divorce papers and the hearing is in a few weeks. I haven't seen or talked to my soon-to-be ex-wife in a month. One day I get a call from my wife's employer. Remember, she was working for Sears and said she was in the hospital. I was in shock, but apparently it was a drug overdose. The lady on the other end said I was an emergency contact. I thanked her for the phone call. I never went to the hospital to check on her. All I was concerned about was getting a divorce. Fast forward 2 months, and at the divorce hearing my soon-to-be ex-wife was there, but she didn't even have a lawyer. She looked horrible and she didn't try to get alimony or anything. All she told the judge was she wanted to divorce just as bad as I did. An hour later, I was a free man. That was 2 years ago. I never heard from or saw her again. Initially, I was really embarrassed to share my story, but I just felt I had to. There are a lot of these YouTube channels that talk about infidelity and share stories. But I picked Tony because out of all the channels that I follow, he seems to be the one that responds to the comments the most. My story was like a movie to me. My wife had been living a double life. She cheated on me multiple times. She was using drugs and alcohol. The list goes on. This experience also made me realize that divorce isn't always about 2 people hating each other. Sometimes